So that means this is depending how we program it. That's I said. This depend programming skills how it is done. But I said it here as really one of the way how can you program it. Maybe you can build like a really professional way to make it the spatial enum sets, and then call this enum set as a systematic way. Maybe use central enum sets and then call those enum set to build this. So maybe you can build also the one maps, and then you can call these maps to build your systematic way, because you don't need to be write down everything is here, but you can control it outside of the source code. So we define our create three tags with the names and the labels that we need in the profession in the example that I show you here. So it's a names, tag names, and then this is the description of the tags. So we define that's like that way. So if you need a more additional tags, we can put it like additional tags, because this case we have only two controllers. That's why this will be using the two controllers. If you additional one, then you can come up together. So it has additional meta profiles for the database for your microservice applications, and it has the titles. That's we already show in the titles part. You see the titles of the user registration REST APIs, and then user some description about, and then also we created UVSoftGroup and contract with development team, and so on and so forth. This is the really meta information about your microservice application. But all things can be handled externally to put it like with the how it's handled, which version it is done. Maybe you can inject these versions that we needed to from your form.xml file, your release versions. We can dynamically put it 1.2.7s. So it's possible everything. So I just show you just very basic part, and after one by one I will put how can you externally put these values with the external configurations. Just you simply change the version number with externally. That's I already in my presentation I already discussed here the previous presentation. How can you externally deploy the application? This is everything is done just properly. How can you handle the external deployments? This all things is dynamically processed. So just you can change the version number, which version you are, and how can you deploy which version you are deploying. You can read these files and override the configuration file into your Java your application.properties files, and then it's automatically deploy the applications which version it was and which documents for which versions. That's the difference. So we have it says title, version number, base URL, and then the contract informations, and so on and so forth. And we define the contract information. So I will repeat simple objects, some creations, we name URL, and this is the default contract object from the Swagger. And so we define the name and then email address, URL, and so on and so forth, and the URL license, and build this meta information. And you can inject this meta information, you can call this meta information, and this is the basic configurations how the Swagger UI font end look like. So we see the Swagger UI font end. It's depending how it is professionally designed, how it is handled, how it is done, and it's depending on how you manage it, those annotation, those applications. So what we did, just we defined the font and page, how the Swagger present, how will be presented, the basic informations. So that means how we define, then all things, I believe it works automatically. That's I mean. So that means we did the basic configuration, the Swagger UI configurations, and then with meta information, with proper tags. And this tag could be in the externally configure. We can especially make some maps and then put these values into the externally with utility function, utility class. I will show you when I did the next detailed developments as for the next. And the configuration done, and the basic meta information is done and working, and then we need to be next step to annotate, to configure our REST controllers, all the controller that we need to be annotated. So I already started how can you annotate it, some controller, some part of the controller. So it is some part of the controller how the annotated. So you see we APIs, the annotation API, very straightforward annotations, and we just like Swagger UI and call the service names, the definition of the tag names. So if I go to the tags, you see the tag names, user registration services. That's really properly designed, and how it is works, and then it's working the control. So we define the Swagger UI configuration. This is our class that's we define here, and then define the log information. Also you can pass the log information that you needed, require information. So we see the tags, the service names, and this is one of the we define the operations, some value, that means the name of the operations. If I go to the Swagger UI, you can see the Swagger UI. So show, and then you see the description, the dit, and the view list of available only the content register user, the list of view list of available register users. That's exactly we define the here the view list of available register users, and then a response, doesn't really need it, and then response type. So it has a lot of possibility. You can response, you can have a more response type, the code number 200, 401, depending, and response, it has small description about the response type if it's depending. And we have just simply API annotations, the description of the functions, API endpoints, and description and response type, and so on and so forth. Nothing more special. You can control all the control you have. Just very straightforward. It is created, and even if you see these pictures like that, we just started like this. We can have a annotation like this annotation update functions. It has a API params, and then it has the names and the value, and the name of the, just say we put it the similar names, value, and we have a default value of these annotations, the default value 200. If I go to the update functions, if you see how it is works, so the update functions, if I go to the update functions and see, it is the fill the default value, exactly the default value is filled. So sorry. So it is default value is filled. Oops. So it is properly filled. So it is rest endpoint. No, it is a little bit smaller. We can put it. So a little bit smaller. So it is properly what the descriptions that we put it, each operation names that we already show you in the each operation names. Each operation names, we can put it here. Then also the parameters, we can set all the default value, and there is a more attributes is the API parameters. You can look for the look for Google it and find some possibility. But as I said, I will continue the development. That's the initial annotation for the Swagger UI. How can you integrate the Swagger? How can you open APIs to integrate the applications, and the basic is understanding the meta information. That's I did it here. So if I go to this controller, just I have only simple definitions. I use the API annotation to all these tags and build annotate some functions. You will put it here, annotate some functions, and then you have some response type, it's a simple annotation, and so on and so forth. That's the really basic and basic starting points. How can you integrate the Swagger UI into